Over the years, I did a couple of bits and bobs for Creative Scotland. I found that Creative Scotland, I mean, this is going back 20 years ago, it was predominantly run by English people, and a lot of them were very, very wealthy. I didn't see a lot of poor people in Creative Scotland. Saying that, did a Venice Biennale, and Jim Lambie was one of the artists that came across. He seemed quite down to earth. I remember we were sitting at a meal with the great and the good, and Jim was complaining that he couldn't get crack cocaine anywhere in Venice. True story. Anyway, on the Zambo TV, with two special guests today, and the subject is going to be Creative Scotland. Right, look, what happened?
What happened? Creative Scotland have cut the open fund for individuals, which is 6.6 million fund, which is the core route that a lot of artists who are just individual artists use to enable them to pursue creative projects.
So you spoke earlier, can we remember what their budget is roughly over the course of a year?
I think it's about 150 million, but I could be wrong.
So you reckon, has Westminster slashed this cash? How did they lose it?
So the new Scottish Government have not confirmed Creative Scotland's funding to them, and so Creative Scotland have taken the decision that for the financial health of the organisation they need to cut this fund, which is worth 6.6 million.
Which in a bigger scheme of things, as we said up at the workshop, that's £1.10 from every taxpayer in Scotland. It's not exactly a monstrous amount of dough. However, the rub is this is affecting small individual artists.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Directly, yeah.
So we've got Ben as well. So they could have went for one of the big posh projects, saved an awful lot more money, but they have eviscerated guys like you.
Yeah. So they've kept the funding open. There's still an open fund, but it's for organisations. So in order to apply to that, you need to have gone through the levels of bureaucracy to have established an arts organisation. And then you can apply for project funding for that arts organisation. But if you want to get core funding off them, that's a whole other thing.
So instead of arting, A-R-T-I-N-G, I think I've just made a new thing up. Instead of arting, what you've effectively became is a
Middle manager.
A middle manager. That's a great word for it. Now, we're not going to rip the throat out of Creative Scotland. The new government in Westminster are just going to keep on squeezing us until we pop. So I would imagine Westminster cuts the funding, Scottish Government get less money, Creative Scotland get less money. However, as Luke says, or as I would imagine, I've not looked into it, I've not did a lot of research on this, Luke, but I would say there's possibly some big projects they could maybe have shaved a couple of quid. Absolutely beautiful. They could have shaved a couple of quid off the bigger projects and help fund the smaller artists without having them making them jump through hoops and becoming ostensibly middle management.
Absolutely. What I've encountered in the arts industry is that as an industry it's been created to replicate other industries. It has the same office setups and capital costs associated with buildings, utilities bills, staffing bills. All these things are huge amounts of money that need to go out in order for the support organisations to exist. And that funding is also precarious, but is the funding that at this time Creative Scotland is choosing to protect. And the thing that Creative Scotland has said is expendable to them as the national arts organisation is this very small pot which enables creatives, individual artists, to pursue an album they want to record, or a piece of visual art, or community theatre, or a community writing group. All of that agency that an individual has been winnowed away over the years by them selecting what kind of projects aren't and aren't fundable, and then has reached this point whereby just none of those projects can exist, and the agency of the individual artist is obliterated.
Interestingly enough, I bumped into Isa a couple of days ago, and she says that was one of the only courses of funding she could get and now that's been denied to her as well.
Unless the only other ones are like pots that are available in England as well.
Can Scottish artists apply for English funding?
Well, I know about music ones, there's like Help Musicians, which is UK wide, but then you're up against, all of the people in England that are applying for it as well.
And what we're seeing here is like the government saying that you shouldn't rely just on this national body for funding, that you should diversify your funding streams, that you should apply to other funders. But in order to do that, you need to involve yourself in the bureaucracy of those organisations.
The creative mind often doesn't work well as a middle manager. That's the opposite of what we're trying to get musicians and artists to do, isn't it? We want them to think way outside the box, really.
Yeah, it's very different from here's some money, do some art.
I spoke to Luke about it in the workshop. My theory is governments fear creativity, they fear critical thinking, they fear artists. An essay, a poem, a video can actually be enough to bring down a government, and now it's looking almost as if they're middle managing the small guys straight out of the picture.
Well, you said something to me before at the workshop, and I've forgotten the terms that exactly you used. I think it was Vogue and Mind Grip.
The Vogue and Mind Grip, man. Never in history have we lived through such a strong psychological pull from the media onto people. That's what we're experiencing just now,
And you were asking me, do you think we'll liberate ourselves as a country? Like, will Scotland continue to let itself be treated like this? And then we talked about self-determination, needing to have, in order to be able to self-determine, you need to have a strong sense of who you are, you need to have a strong sense of cultural identity. And people who help enable that cultural identity, come from lots of different industries and forms, but when you've got really powerful music being made that encapsulates a moment or a movement or an idea or an amazing show, like the Cheviot Stag and Black Oil, like 784's work, like any of that really rich ability to produce a sense of cultural identity for Scotland and its people, that people can gather around in places where we can gather and exchange and mutually support each other and just help each other out and do each other up and lift each other's energy and be able to trust one another. I think that's what is in the end game really under threat here, and we've reached quite a scary point at it for me.
So we're now more than less in a position where the voices that we need to hear are utterly drowned under the crap that is the mainstream media, the news outlets, the TV companies and everything else. And as Luke says, the ability for a small theatre company to put on something that could actually affect people's life or how they think has now been kiboshed and kicked into the long grass. I've had money off Creative Scotland. I've worked for Creative Scotland before. As I said, I found it very middle class and it was great, but I think one of Scotland's biggest problems in general is our political class and the people that have got access to the funding are all from pretty well-to-do backgrounds. I want to see more people that have got black marks on their fingernails from hitting themselves with hammers. Luke Winter, thank you very much, sir. Been jamming. You're going to do the usual and say bye-bye, YouTube?
Bye-bye, YouTube.
Right, bye-bye.